The Mets kept the magic and their NLCS hopes alive to force Game 6 in LA. In the words of Biggie Smalls, we're going back to Cali. All right, let me bring it in. Let's get you guys some fire content with Anthony Rivera of the Subway to Shea podcast and your favorite Mets content creator, Tyler Ward, is in the... We got the 3-box going here, fellas. We got our own little magic going on. What's going on, man? What's going on, guys?
How you doing?
All's well, man. Shoot, how
Good,
you guys
Brandon.
feeling?
That was a fantastic intro, man.
Thank you. I know Biggie
Always
Smalls is
elite.
from Brooklyn, but shoot, when the Mets are hot like that, we're representing Queens. So who wants to go first to kick this thing off for us? Tyler, should we go Tyler here?
Sure. Yeah, let's let it rip. Awesome.
All right, here we go. Thoughts on the Game 5, man? A huge win because it looked like they opened up a can of instant bats. How you feeling after Game 5?
I love the wordplay there, and yes, they absolutely did. I mean, listen, the Mets need to show up. This was an elimination game, and they should have had that mentality the previous couple days. And while they unfortunately didn't fare well there in the homestand in Games 3 and 4, that set the stage here for a redemption story beginning here in Game 5. To beat up on Jack Flaherty with those 8 earned runs over 3 innings was absolutely masterful. The offense was early and often. So many special things about this takeaway from this ball game that I want to share with you. But a couple in particular that stand out to me is one, right before Polar Bear Pete Alonso hit that 3-run shot to begin the ball game right away. I was saying to everybody, listen, all it takes is one swing, one drive to completely change the complexion of this series, and he did exactly that. His 4th home run of this year's postseason, stepping up in a big way yet again for the Mets in basically elimination play. Then you look at, okay, the Mets scored double digits. This is the first time that they've scored double digits in a postseason game since the LDS in 2015. Game 3 against these Dodgers when Matt Harvey on the mound gained the win. Yoenis Cespedes with a 3-run shot, and fitting that both those guys ended up throwing and catching the first pitch before Game 5 began here. And then we look at everything that you saw there with runners in scoring position. That guarantees a win. The Mets are undefeated in this year's postseason when they're actually hitting with runners in scoring position. So simply to say, they just got to keep hitting when it matters most.
Anthony, you heard the man history was made. What stood out most to you in Game 5?
I think for me is another big stat is the Mets didn't strike out in the entire game. They're only the 3rd team in the expansion history to do this. The last team to do it was in 2002 when the Los Angeles Angels did it against the San Francisco Giants in the 2002 World Series. So if the Mets can keep that energy going, especially with a lineup like the Dodgers, you're going to have to score runs, and the Mets are going to have to do that to win Game 6 and force a Game 7. The biggest thing for me was for the Mets to get out of Queens, not allowing that Dodgers team to celebrate and pop champagne bottles on their field. And they did that. Now a lot of the pressure goes on the Dodgers to finish this off at home. So let's see if the Mets can put more pressure on that Dodgers team.
Anthony, you mentioned that they brought the energy. Who brought the magic? Let's give an individual award. Whose performance stood out most to you?
Yeah, I got a couple here. You know, offensively, Starling Marte and Jesse Winker. Marte went 4 for 5, had 3 doubles. Jesse Winker was kind of like a table setter in the middle of the lineup, went 2 for 3. It's great to see him back in the lineup with JD Martinez struggling. Then on the pitching side of things, I got to go with Ryan Stanek and Edwin Diaz. Those two guys in the NLCS have a 1.28 ERA compared to the rest of the bullpen, which has an 8.52 ERA. The Mets are going to need as many people as possible in this bullpen because Stanek and Diaz can't do it alone.
Hey, Tyler, I thought Francisco Alvarez really stepped up. He was 3 for 4 on the night, and you know about his struggles throughout the postseason. Who do you feel like brought the magic?
Yeah, I mean, outside the obvious one that Ant already alluded to there in Jesse Winker, who I've been clamoring for, you will not hear a more outspoken Mets fan than myself from pregame back to Game 3, where Jesse Winker wasn't in the lineup, didn't understand for Games 3 and 4. We saw the impact he had there in Game 5. But then you bring in Francisco Alvarez, and this is the same man that 48 hours ago, most Mets fans were saying Luis Torrens needs to be our catcher for the foreseeable future. Alvarez simply doesn't have it. He looked completely overmatched in so many of his at-bats in this year's postseason, but something changed. The mentality changed, and that approach certainly did. And it began there in Game 4 with an opposite field single, then a hit by pitch. I really didn't like that Medi pinch hit Winker for him in that situation. I thought Alvarez was finally getting quality at-bats in the LCS, and thankfully that transferred over there into a massive Game 5. A leadoff double, an RBI single, another single, a 3-hit game for El Troll. That is amazing for this Mets team. The 22-year-old phenom is just getting started, and that is exactly why you should not write him off just yet.
All right, Tyler, Anthony, I know we're still riding this high from last night, but, we got to sit back, take a look at the game, and think about what could get this team beat going forward, because there was times where the Dodgers tried to pull out their own magic on their end. So, Tyler, I'll start with you. Fill in the blank and then quickly explain. The Mets can't blank out in L.A. or they're going home.
The Mets can't strand runners or they're going to go home. It's as simple as that. We have seen this. Their demise has been stranding everyone their mother. Seriously, Brandon, you got to find out where your relatives are. They might be there at second and third still because they're not rounding home. That has been the big problem for the Mets, where they were blown out in game 1. Then we saw there as well in games 3 and 4. The recipe for success is not only a combination of making sure that they handle things on the strike zone end from a pitching perspective, but more so on the approach with their offense. As long as they're early and often taking quality at-bats, grinding out at-bats, and making sure that they're not stranding bases loaded with no outs the way that they did there in game 4, good things are destined to happen.
Yeah, you talk about them leaving runners stranded. It's like you're watching the movie Castaway with Tom Cruise. Anthony, the Mets can't blank or they're getting sent home.
The Mets can't walk batters or they're going to be sent home. There's too much walking of this entire Dodgers lineup. This isn't the Phillies. The Phillies chase. They were able to manipulate that lineup. This is a very disciplined, very well-oiled lineup when it comes to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And if you walk batters, you give this team an opportunity to score runs. It's not just the top of the lineup. You got Tommy Edman in there, Kike Hernandez, all these guys, even Pages had a couple of home runs. You can't allow these walks to continue, because you do that and you're going to see Shohei Ohtani 6 or 7 times. You're going to see Mookie Betts at the same rate. You got to limit the walks, and the pitching staff has to step up in these next 2 games if the Mets are going to get to the World Series this year.
Anthony, Game 6 goes down at the end of Sunday Fun Day, 8:08 p.m. Give us your previews and your thoughts.
Well, there's no other pitcher that I want on the mound for the New York Mets than Sean Manaea right now. He's the ace of the staff, and he's got to set the tone for this team. The Mets also need to score early. They're not scoring against these starting pitchers, although yesterday they did it, and look, they won this game. So they're going to have to step up early and score some runs, because we know how tough the Dodgers bullpen is. But it'll be Sean Manaea who needs to set the tone against what I would assume is the Dodgers bullpen game that's going to set up Game 6.
Tyler, what about you? Give us one of those win one for the Gipper speeches.
Oh, yeah, you got to start with Simone Southpaw, as Anthony just alluded to. When he is dominating, great things tend to happen for this Mets team. And Brandon, we just spoke a couple days ago on how well Sean did against Shohei Ohtani. Shohei's still trying to figure out how that sweeper and sinker works. The arm slot has been brilliant, and hopefully that continues. And just fingers crossed, Ohtani hasn't had too many tricks up his sleeve and having the proper adjustments since then. But it comes down to not only this offense, but it's this Mets bullpen, okay? We all know that this is a fairly weak bullpen for the Mets when it comes to quality options that they have. Edwin Diaz was vintage Edwin Diaz that we saw there for the huge save in Game 5. We're going to need a bank on Edwin, as well as our higher leverage guys should be called upon, because this is yet another elimination game. It needs to be viewed as such. They have to be going in there do or die right from the start in this matchup. So as I'm looking at this Mets offense, you need to make sure you're doing your selective heading per usual and spread it out in bunches. That's how the Dodgers have went so well about this series, is not having one massive inning in the 7th, the 8th, or the 9th that the Mets did pretty much there against the Brewers and the Phillies to be dependent on winning baseball. You're seeing the Dodgers 2 in the 2nd, 2 in the 4th, 3 in the 6th. Now the Mets are finally starting to spread it out. They finally got on top of a starting pitcher. Now let's see if they can beat up on a bullpen that they did famously well in Game 2 in LA against these Dodgers.
Tyler, tell the people they can find you.
You guys can check out my work, as always, at WardyNYM on YouTube or wherever you get your Mets content. Thank you guys so much, as always. Anthony, a pleasure, a great friend of mine, as always. So really happy to be doing this segment with him finally here on the platform. Brandon, thank you so much for making this happen and being a tremendous host per usual. And hopefully we're talking again real soon about amazing Mets baseball continuing past Game 6.
Anthony, drop the @ Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, at Ant Rivera 86 for me personally, and then at Subway to Shea, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Thank you so much, Brandon. Appreciate it. And Tyler, thanks, buddy.
This was fun, guys. Let's go Mets.